So I record this. This will be recorded up for those folks that don't make it, up on the district YouTube channel. And we'll do that with all the other training sessions also. So in case somebody misses something, they can go jump on it.
And will those be kind of saved in posterity, Rudy?
Yeah, yes. The ones from last year, I think, are still there. So,
cool.
Yeah, so I think just keep updating them all the time. So I put them on. I don't remove them. So I'll let somebody else work on how to clean up the list 20 years from now. So Jamie, unmute yourself there. And I'm going to do a screen share right now and get over here to Jamie's presentation. And go to slideshow. Come on here. Click here. Here we go. Come on, slideshow. Terry Davis coming back in. All right, let me get out of here and come back in. For some reason, this is not sharing like I want it to. Come on, show.
Are you going into presenter mode first, Rudy, and then sharing the presenter mode?
Yeah. Anyways, can you see the screen or not?
Yes.
Okay, Jamie, why don't we go down through this and unmute yourself there, and I'll walk through the slides anyways.
Okay, I should be unmuted. Can everybody hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yes.
Okay, awesome. All right, so we're going to go ahead and start.
Yes, please.
Okay, all right, great. Welcome to everybody. So this presentation is to chat about the treasurer's role. Every club is different. We have all different size clubs, small, medium, large. Some people have a treasurer, some don't. Some are doubling as a treasurer and secretary. So we're going to go through some basic overview and some guidelines, some best practices. And then, of course, I'll open it up for questions. If anybody has questions as I'm going through, Rudy, as long as that's okay with you, please go ahead and ask me a question or shoot it into Rudy, and he'll make sure that we answer it for you. So the first thing is to talk a little bit about financial leadership. We've seen over the time that it's very important that not only our club members, but our board actually understands what our finances are. This is what can sometimes get us in trouble. And so it's important that whomever the treasurer is, that they have a thorough understanding of financial reports so that they can explain and make sure that everyone, understands income and expenses and what you end up with. And I know that might seem crazy to you, but we do have folks out there who don't understand that. And as not as necessarily as club members, obviously we need to know, but certainly as a board, we have fiduciary responsibility. So we need to make sure that our board members truly understand what the finances are so that we don't have things going on that shouldn't be going on. So it's going to be important for them to communicate, to be able to translate that information into a non-financial way, because a lot of people obviously don't have the financial savvy. We have the ability to reframe information for them, to put it into terms which they would understand. And then also to take questions, whether it be from the club, whether it be from the board. If you happen to be using an outside accounting or tax firm, to be able to interpret what those questions are and provide the information, and the responses that will answer the questions appropriately. The next thing someone needs to have, of course, is a planning ability. So Rudy, that's the next slide. So under planning, you need to be able to partner with your chairs to develop a useful budget. It's very important that you have a budget, obviously, so you know where you are, where you're going, and that you stay within the parameters that whether it be your club or your board has approved. A treasurer can bring a lot of value to helping the president-elect and, of course, the current president develop a budget. They have the history, they know the trends, so they're very good at being able to give you a rough draft, and then you as a treasurer and or we have presidents in here as well, you can take that information and you can help continue to refine it and develop it and to do forecasts as things change throughout the year. And basically our budgets, it's a viewpoint or an overview, if you will, of what our strategic plan is. So when you're looking at your budgets, not only just looking at them for this year, but if you have your line of succession, it's great to have them involved. Have your president-elect, have your president designee. If you have these people involved in the process, there's a lot of continuity from year to year. You can do multiple year projects, and it doesn't seem like you're starting over from scratch each year. So I would encourage you to use your budget, use your treasurer, use your positions that you have, all your other chairs to help develop the budget, so you do have that continuity. And then the next piece that's important for a treasurer is to be able to execute on the strategy. They need to be able to look down the road and see what's coming ahead. If you have investments, they should be working with an investment advisor, if that's who you have, so that they know, where are your funds at? How is the economy impacting that? What do you have them invested in? So it goes beyond just reporting your income and your expenses. The treasurer really needs to be the person who has the big financial picture and can break that down for you, into the pieces that you need to run the club on a day-to-day basis. So moving on, what I would say is there's basically 5 major responsibilities of a treasurer. So of course, the first, developing a budget, managing the funds, collecting and submitting dues, working with the Rotary Foundation, and then of course, mentoring a successor. So some concepts and processes as a treasurer that are important to understand, so we can move on to the next slide, is what bank accounts do we have? Many times people want to combine, if they have a club and a foundation, put those into one account. That's a no-no, can't do that. A club and a foundation are 2 separate entities. They need to have 2 separate boards. They need to have 2 separate bank accounts, and they need to be managed independently. So make sure that you have the separate bank accounts, at least for your club and foundation. And then of course, other clubs, they may choose to have special bank accounts for service projects and what have you. And that's fine. There's no problem, but just know what they are and make sure that they're clearly identified on your income statement each month. Make sure you know who your signers are and how many signers are required. Many clubs will have a limit where one person can sign up to, say, $200, and then anything over 200, it requires 2 signers. Some clubs, it's mandatory 2 signers. So you need to go back to your bylaws. You need to look at that, and that will be your determining factor as to how many signers you need. And make sure that you always keep that current. We change sometimes boards positions every single year. You need to make sure that you connect with the bank and that your signers are updated so that you don't have any problem. And again, you want to make sure about the approval limits of the signers. And then you also want to make sure that you understand what your process is for depositing and accounting for funds. In a lot of small clubs, it's not feasible to have multiple people doing these types of activities. In medium or large size clubs, it can. For example, in some clubs, they have a person who is responsible for picking up the mail and depositing the checks or cash, whatever it might be, to the bank. And then that deposit slip moves on to the treasurer, and then the treasurer will record that and reconcile that. If you have an outside accounting firm, a lot of times then the outside accounting firm would be the person who would reconcile that data and provide reports back. So you just want to make sure that you have a check and balance system. It's not wise to necessarily have one person pick up the checks, deposit the checks, reconcile the checks, and not have a review at the end of the year. So you need to make sure that you have that check and balance, not only for the club's purposes, but it's also great as a protection for whoever your treasurer is. So, you know that everything is on the up and up. You need to also understand, what is your process for dispersing funds? Again, what are the limitations? Who can sign? How many have to sign? Do you have a check request form? And I would encourage clubs to have a check request form, so that for every item that is paid, if there's a request for it and it's approved, you have the documentation, so that if you are ever questioned, then you would be able to show that documentation and that the proper process was followed, and then there would be never, any questions. The next thing is to understand how and when your dues are paid, how much you have to pay, of course, to cover district dues, Rotary International dues, and then any other club expenses that you are attaching as part of the dues payment. Some clubs will attach, say, lunch fees, and that will be part of your dues payment, or some clubs may have other activities. So you need to decide that. And again, these should all be things that are outlined in your bylaws, and then of course further defined under your club's policies and procedures. So does anybody have any questions so far on that information? Okay, well, we will move on. So some of the questions that come up are, what happens if a member is delinquent on their dues? So from the club, you need to have, again, in your bylaws, what happens when a club member becomes delinquent. And this is really important. A lot of people and clubs, boards, don't have what should happen, the steps to be taken in their bylaws. And then they get to a point where they've got a problem with a member that is seriously delinquent, and there's no guidelines. This can create for a very messy situation. So we would encourage you to make sure that you do have that process documented as what will happen if they are delinquent. From a district standpoint, if you are delinquent on your dues to the district, the first thing that happens is that you will not, or your club, I should say, will not be eligible for any DDF funds. So it's very important that you make sure that you're paying your district dues, so that you can obviously, get DDF funds, get the Wallace Jones funds, any of those types of things. If you are delinquent on Rotary International dues, they will give you a period of time to pay. And if you don't pay, then what will happen is they can suspend your club, and it can go as far as pulling your charter. So it's very important that you do pay your dues to both Rotary International and to district. If any of your clubs are having a problem with that, please feel free to reach out to me. I certainly will work with you on a district standpoint. And then if you need help with Rotary International, I can help you there too. If we need to intercede and, work out a payment plan or something. Reports that are due to district and Rotary International, basically what's due is what your dues are. We will send out an invoice to you, and then you can just go ahead and return it. The same with Rotary International. They send out the SAR report. You should get that usually the second week of January, and then the second week of February. And then the district will come out the following week, the third week of each month, because we get our numbers off of the SARS report. Your secretary will be trained on how to ensure that everything is up to date. But when you do get that report from Rotary International, please do review it. Make sure you review it with your secretary and make sure that everything is correct. And all those corrections need to be made before December 31st and before June 30th. Because Rotary International, whatever your membership is at that point in time, is what you will be billed for. And they no longer will make any adjustments to that. And we have seen clubs where they've got 4, 5, 6 members that actually are no longer, but they have to end up paying dues for those people because no adjustments are being made. So please make sure that everything is up to date and work with your secretary to make sure that both of you have reviewed the list and that everything is on there. The other thing you want to check is if there's, say, a married couple that is in the club, you know, or 2 partners. They're both going to get a Rotary International magazine. And a lot of times there's no need to have that done. So you can request that only one of the 2 people get the Rotary magazine. And of course, you know, that will save the $6. So those are the different types of things that you should look at and make sure that the monies that are being sent are correct. What reports do boards need to review every month? As a nonprofit, whether it's your club or your foundation, there should be an official set of financial reports prepared each month. That would include an income statement, which shows your income and your expenses and the net. And that would include a balance sheet, which shows all your assets and liabilities of the club. So you need to make sure that the board members receive that they review it, and you know that you have it on file going forward. Your financial records from the state of California, corporately, you only need 1 set of financials per year, and that would be your financials as of the end of your fiscal year. Most of our clubs are on a June 30 fiscal year end, so it would be July 1 to June 30. So you'd have those, and then of course you would have your tax return. Those you need to keep indefinitely. All your other records and supporting documents, you need to keep those for a minimum of 3 years. And then after 3 years, you can dispose of them. Currently, the agencies do accept scanned in documents. So you don't have to keep hard documents anymore. You can have PDFs of everything, and that will work just fine. As far as what regulatory reporting is required, the regulatory reporting, of course, you have to turn in your tax return once a year. You also have to do your statement of information to the Secretary of State every other year. So those are the 2 things. You also have to turn in your RRF1, which is to the state of California that talks all about your nonprofit. So whoever is preparing your tax return would be aware of that and would be able to make sure that that is done as well. You should have your books looked at independently at least once a year. That can certainly be done by an outside firm. You can also create a audit committee, if you will, within your club. That would be, of course, folks that are not involved in the board, not the treasurer, and you would have them review the books to make sure that everything balances and that there are no questions. Anybody have any questions regarding that information? Okay, moving on. So some best practices. 1, make sure that you're going to collect and record your dues from members. We've had some treasurers that sort of hold everything and I'll do it, once every couple months or once every 3 months. We would not recommend that practice. You get into a position where you don't remember what happened or things get lost. So again, this goes back to making sure that everything is entered and reconciled and that reports are given every month to your board. We would also encourage you to report to your club as well. They're very interested in understanding the finances. And that's one of the things we hear over and over is, wow, I wish I knew more about where my club was spending money. So we would encourage you to do that. Make sure that you make deposits timely and you pay your bills timely. Reconcile all your bank accounts monthly. And again, make sure you maintain a system of checks and balances for whatever works for your club. And then work with the committees to ensure that the budgets are adhered to. With COVID, for example, we all had budgets and then of course things didn't get spent as we intended. However, we still had monies available. So look at that, decide what you want to do with it. Are you going to use it on service projects? Are you going to accrue that money, to the following year for the next president to use for a project that you had budgeted for this year? So if any of you need help with that or any of your treasurers or treasurers yourself need assistance, just give me a call and I can show you how to do that, no problem. Make sure you provide a budget to actual report so the committee chairs and the board and the club can actually see what the performance is. Are you under budget? Are you over budget? Why are you over budget? Were these conscious decisions or is there someone out there that's, just spending and, no one is monitoring that. So by looking at that every month, you'll understand what your variances are and if you have to make adjustments into how you're operating your club. Make sure everybody manages within their budget. And then, of course, as I said, make sure you prepare a budget for your successor and work with them on that. Okay, moving on. A couple more items. So we want to make sure that, again, we set up to 2 separate bank accounts for club and foundation. And then make sure that you understand those processes. And make sure that you're adhering to the laws regarding donated funds and reporting. This is very important for both a 501c4 and C3. So just to refresh everyone's memory, 501c4, which is your club, they cannot accept donations and provide donation letters for it to be tax deductible. A 501c4 is not a tax deductible entity. So if anybody wants to make a donation and have it be tax deductible, it needs to go to a 501c3. So if you have a foundation set up, fantastic. That allows you to get those donated funds and the donor can have a write-off for that. It's important to remember also that if you are going to accept restricted funds to your foundation, and a restricted fund would be, for example, I want to donate $5,000 and I want that to be used specifically for a scholarship program at the high school. That would be a very specific restricted fund. So if you accepted that money and put it in, you would have to use those funds for that particular thing. If you were unable to spend the funds for that, or you wanted to spend it for something different, you would have to go back to the donor and the donor would have to release that. So that it could be spent on something else, and you would need to get that in writing. So it's very important if you, your club is going to accept these restricted funds, that you identify them separately on your balance sheet and make sure that whatever it is intended for, that is what it's used for. Not doing that can cause an issue where your 501c3 could actually be suspended. So make sure that you are doing that. You want to make sure also that you're registered with the appropriate agencies. So, obviously the IRS, Franchise Tax Board, the Registry of Charitable Trusts, if applicable. And then, of course, if you're a corporation in the state of California, that you're staying current with the Secretary of State and filing your statement of information. And then we also encourage you to get written and signed contracts for any type of big things that you do, and keep those in your historical file. There have been a lot of clubs that, you know, are in smaller communities, and they'll, you know, hey, we're going to have this fundraiser, we're going to have it at this hotel, and they don't get contracts for it. And then unfortunately, things can go south and it goes sour. So we, of course, encourage you to make sure that you do have these contracts, and that you keep them for historical purposes. Again, to back up what your financials are for the year, and also in case you are ever audited. We talked about the independent review of the financials. We want to make sure that you're managing your foundation according to the proper laws. If you have any questions on that, let me know. I do have some pamphlet information I can email you that will give you a very good overview of the things that you need to make sure you're doing. Make sure your semi-annual reports are reviewed. Again, paper, a lot of clubs like to keep paper. You don't have to. You can keep things electronic today. You want to make sure that if you don't have someone designated in your club to hold on to records, that you do have someone to do that. A lot of clubs will pass it from treasurer to treasurer or secretary to secretary, which is absolutely fine. But do make sure that you have someone who, you know, or a process, so it doesn't get lost. And all of a sudden, 2 or 3 years later, you can't find records, and you need to be able to do that. We would also, excuse me, encourage you to participate in a visioning session. I don't know if anyone here today has done that. Tom User was the individual in our district who did that and did an outstanding job. Rudy, I don't know, do we have someone, do you know who's doing that right now?
Me?
You, okay. So Rudy, I'm sure, is available to assist you with the visioning sessions, and he can talk a little bit more about that. But please do participate in those. We found it to be really helpful in getting a strategic plan together and building the cohesiveness in your club and getting all your club members engaged. They really enjoy getting engaged and being part of what your success and your fun and your future is. So we would encourage that. And then make sure that you have adequate insurance coverage when you're having events. The international, of course, they have insurance, and each club is covered with that. But sometimes there are events that are held where you need to have additional insurance. For example, people will have a parade, or they might have a art and wine festival or a lobster fest or whatever, and you're serving alcohol and things like that. You may need to have additional coverage for that. So make sure that you get that. There is a company out there, rvnuccio.com. They are a great resource for that type of insurance, and they're relatively inexpensive. A lot of clubs in our district have used them, so I'll just throw that out there for a reference.
Jamie?
Okay, yes.
What type of organization is the club, and what type of organization is the foundation?
A club is a 501c4 and a foundation is a 501c3.
Thank you.
Did that answer your question, or did
Yes.
you have something further? Okay. Okay, so moving on to the DDF grants. We want to make sure that everybody understands the process of DDF. So the DRF will send the approved listing to the treasurer. So this year, Steve Yeager, he's the DRF. And so he sends the listing to me. And at that point, I go through and make sure that every club who wants to have DDF is active status with the Secretary of State. So you can go online and you can check that yourselves at sos.ca.gov. Make sure you're active. If you're not active, we'll let you know. And you'll have to get your status back to active before any DDF funds could be released. We will also double check to make sure that your dues are paid with Rotary International and with the district. And then we are now doing everything by direct deposit, unless there is some prevailing reason that a club can't accept that. So make sure you have the direct deposit authorization on file and then it's current. And if you do change your checking account, you will need to let us know. So that we can make sure it's going to the right place. And then a DDF money, because it is from Rotary International and Rotary International supports clubs, it can only be direct deposited to your club. So a lot of clubs have asked for us to put it into the foundation. We cannot do that legally. We have to give it to your club. And then from the club, if you'd like to write a check and put that into your foundation because you're using it for a project, that's fine. That's not a problem. But you do need to have it go into your club. And then of course, make sure that you're keeping all your receipts and everything, because if you do not spend all the DDF that you're awarded, you will have to send the money back to me at the end of the year because I have to send it back to Rotary International. So,
DDF and DRF, please.
Excuse me?
DDF and DRF. Could you spell those out, please?
Oh, DDF is the district designated funds, and the DRF is that's the district representative for the foundation.
Yeah, District Rotary Foundation Chair.
I have a quick question. We did get a new bank for the Indio Noon Club. How do we go about making sure that we have the correct banking information with Rotary International for that direct deposit?
Okay. If you can, my email address is 5330 treasurer 5330 treasurer @gmail.com.
Mhm.
And if you just shoot me a quick email and yeah, just let me know again your Indio Sunrise, and I will double check the number and I'll tell you what we have on status for it.
Okay. Yeah, actually,
Okay.
Indio Noon, so I'll get that out in the next couple of days. Thanks.
Okay, yeah,
Pat-
send it
Patsy-
to me. I'll
Patsy,
double check
Yeah,
it.
Patsy has a question for you.
Yep, Jamie, can you tell us what the dues are for the 2021, 2022 year, both international and district?
I do not have those off the top of my head, but I will email them out to everybody.
Okay,
Because I
thank you.
know Rotary International is going up each year. And actually the district dues, I believe, went up by $8. So I believe they're going to be 60 next year. So I just need to double check that, but I will email that out to all the clubs.
Okay, thank you.
Jamie, the district dues are $60, and I have no idea what Rotary International is.
Yeah, Rotary International are going up, but I don't know off the top of my head, but I will certainly find out.
Yeah, I think they were going up like $1 a year over 3 years, or maybe it was 2, whatever it was.
Yeah, it's, I don't know, $1.25 or $2, something like that. You're right, Rudy. So, but I will definitely look it up and email it out. Okay, so then we had here just a sample of what a check request form is. This is the one that we use for the district. So if for some reason you need, you know, something from the district, we're refunding you something, or you need a check for something that the district is assisting you with, here would be the check request form. And this is also a sample that you might want to consider using for your own clubs to, you know, request checks and track things. So other than that, the last page has my contact information. And if you all would like to have a copy of this with this information, I'm happy to have Richard Lemire email this out if you're interested. So you have this data.
Yes, please.
Yes.
Could you do
Yes,
that?
please.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, we can do that. We'll mail it out to everybody who showed up here. We have the list. And does anyone have any other questions on any of this, or?